The sun hung mercilessly above the village, painting the sky in shades of fire. The soil beneath the farmer's feet was cracked like broken glass, and every step he took stirred up a puff of dust. His name was John, a man whose life had been tied to the earth for as long as he could remember. He stood at the edge of his field, his weathered hands gripping a wooden staff, staring at what was once a place of abundance. Seasons had passed, but the crops no longer listened to his hard work. Year after year, his harvest failed, leaving him with mounting debts and little to feed his family. The whispers of neighbors carried across the village. He should sell the land. What's the point of fighting against nature? Some said, others shook their heads in pity. But John, though weary, was not ready to let go. One evening, as the golden light of sunset poured into their small farmhouse, his teenage son, Daniel, asked the question he had been holding back for weeks. "Father, why don't you stop? Everyone says it's useless now. Why keep fighting the same battle?" John looked at his son, his eyes tired yet still carrying a spark. He placed a rough, calloused hand on the boy's shoulder. "As long as we breathe, Daniel," he said gently, "it's never useless. Hope is the last seed we plant, even when all others fail." His words settled in the air like a prayer. But even the strongest souls feel the weight of despair. That winter, after another failed harvest, John sat alone at the kitchen table. A single candle flickered in front of him, casting long shadows on the wooden walls. His wife had passed away years ago, leaving only him and Daniel, and though he had fought, the years of drought and debt had stripped away his strength. He pulled out a small piece of paper and began to write. His hands trembled as he scribbled the words that had been heavy on his heart. "My dear son, tomorrow will be my last day in the field. I have given all I can. Perhaps my lesson is not in the harvest, but in the journey we shared. Do not be angry with me. Remember, a man's worth is not measured only by his success, but by his refusal to give up hope." His eyes blurred with tears as he folded the note carefully and slipped it under Daniel's pillow. The old farmer rose quietly, walked to the door, and looked once more at his land. In the pale moonlight, the field looked like a graveyard of broken dreams. Still, something within him whispered to try, just once more. The next morning, John decided he would plant seeds one final time, even if the ground seemed hopelessly dry. The dawn arrived, painting the horizon in hues of pink and orange. With a sack of seeds slung across his shoulder, John stepped onto the field. Each step was heavy, but his resolve carried him forward. He bent down, scooping seeds into his palm, and scattered them across the parched soil. As he worked, laughter rang out in the distance. A group of children from the village came running toward him, curious about the old man's persistence. "Farmer John," one boy shouted, "why are you planting when nothing grows here? Haven't you learned by now?" John straightened, wiping the sweat from his brow, and gave them a tired smile. "Because one day," he said softly, "the sky will listen." The children exchanged puzzled glances, then shrugged and ran off to them. It was nothing more than the stubbornness of an old man. But as the day stretched on, something remarkable happened. By afternoon, the sky darkened. For the first time in years, heavy clouds rolled in, covering the sun. A cool wind swept through the field, carrying with it the smell of rain, and then it came. Raindrops fell, first lightly, then in torrents, soaking the cracked earth. The children who had laughed earlier returned, dancing and cheering in the rain. John stood silently in the field, his face lifted to the heavens. Tears streamed down his cheeks, mingling with the raindrops. For the first time in years, he felt the earth breathing again. Weeks passed, and something magical unfolded. Green shoots broke through the once barren soil, reaching toward the sky. Slowly, the field transformed into a sea of gold as the crops flourished. The villagers, astonished, began to speak of it as a miracle. "Farmer John never gave up," they whispered, "and now look at his land. It is alive again." But as the crops grew strong, John's body grew weak. Years of labor had taken their toll, and his health began to fail. Daniel noticed how his father's hands shook when he tried to lift a tool, how his breathing grew heavier with each passing day. One evening, as the setting sun painted the sky in crimson hues, John called his son to the field. The golden stalks swayed around them, whispering in the evening breeze. "Daniel," John said, his voice faint but steady, "do you see this? This harvest isn't just grain. It is proof that life tests us, but hope always answers back if we keep believing." He took Daniel's hand and placed it gently on the soil. "This land, this hope, is now yours. Promise me, son, that no matter how dark the days may seem, you will never stop planting your seeds, because sometimes hope blooms when we least expect it. Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he nodded, holding his father's frail hand tightly. Not long after, John passed away peacefully in his sleep, leaving behind not just a field of gold, but a legacy of resilience. At his funeral, the villagers gathered, each one speaking of his unwavering determination. Some said he was stubborn, others said he was wise, but all agreed on one truth. Farmer John had taught them what it meant to hold on to hope. Daniel stood before the crowd, his voice breaking yet strong. My father's final lesson was simple. He said, "Don't lose hope, even in the darkest times, even when everything tells you to give up. Plant your seeds, believe in tomorrow, because life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." Years later, Daniel continued farming the same land, his father's words echoing in his heart. Children who once mocked the old farmer now came to learn from his son, and the field that was once barren became a symbol of resilience for the entire village. And whenever the sky grew dark with clouds, Daniel would look up, smile, and whisper, "The sky always listens." The golden field swayed in the wind, carrying forward the farmer's final lesson: don't lose hope. For even in the hardest of times, the seeds we plant in faith will one day bloom in ways we never imagined. The story of Farmer John is more than just about crops and soil. It is about life itself. His journey teaches us that even when the world seems barren, even when everything around us whispers give up, the choice to plant one more seed can change everything. Hope is not about ignoring reality. It's about believing in possibilities that have not yet arrived. Just like John's final lesson to his son, we too must remember: no season of hardship lasts forever, and no act of faith goes unnoticed. So, whenever life feels heavy, whenever your dreams seem impossible, ask yourself one question: what seed of hope can I plant today? Because sometimes the smallest seed planted in faith grows into the greatest harvest of our lives.